I'm Shelby Fiegel. I'm the director of the Center for Community and Economic Development at the University of Central Arkansas. We are so excited to be having this event today. Firstly, I want to kick off with a formal welcome to campus with Dr. Patricia Poulter. She is our provost at the University of Central Arkansas. Dr. Poulter, would you please come up here and welcome everybody to campus? Thank you.
On behalf of President Houston Davis and myself, Patty Poulter, autocorrect changes my name to Party Poultry, now you might remember it, I welcome you to the campus of the University of Central Arkansas. As you know, we were founded in 1907 as a normal school, normalizing teacher education. So our roots are in making lives better for Arkansans. And those are among our grand challenges. And as I list these 3 grand challenges that we measure our work against, I want you to think about the things that you do every day for the folks in your sphere, in your circle of influence, in your areas of responsibility. Our first grand challenge is to improve the health and well-being of all Arkansans. To improve the health and well-being of all Arkansans. Secondly, to improve literacy of all types for all Arkansans. Financial, verbal, written, cultural, historical, literacy. And third is to provide the tools that people need to be economically independent, to break the cycle of poverty. Think about the work you do every day. Here at this institution, we are dedicated to, of course, healthcare and business and economic development and the arts and teacher education and cultural events and understanding what it means to create a place where people want to live and grow and stay and create a better world for those that live next to them and those that are yet to come. Each one of you are doing that every day. And we here at UCA appreciate that. UCA, in our last economic impact study, it was revealed that our economic impact is $1.1 billion. That's outstanding. Thank you. And a lot of that comes because of our partnerships with you. I appreciate you, I appreciate your leadership, and I really want to thank our hosts in the CDI and all of the things that Shelby and Dylan and her team do and their partners at other institutions. It is really, really important time and time well spent that we are together, that we are building those connections with one another and understanding the ways that our higher education institutions, 2 years, 4 years, private and public, can work together to make this a state that will not only thrive, but flourish. Thank you so much for being here and have a great day.
Okay, so now I'm going to give you a little run through of what CDI is. And many of you may know about CDI or participated in it. So I do want you to raise your hand if you are a graduate or current participant of CDI. We have a lot of folks in the room. Good. Yes. And I know a lot of you also have some crossover with the other partner organizations that we have with us today. So this event was kind of some background. We launched a formal CDI alumni network this year. As we were prepping for our spring networking, get together, whatever we wanted to call it. I'm actually a current participant in the LEADR Class 19 class. We have to do a community service project. So I thought, let's not reinvent the wheel here. I'm already planning for this event. I'm in LEADR. They have an alumni network. I'm a member of AEDCE, Arkansas Economic Developers Chamber Executives. They have membership. Leadership Arkansas is another distinguished leadership service program in the state, which I hope one day to be a member of. And so I was thinking, let's get all of these folks in a room together to really allow for that networking of folks that already know each other, but also making new connections and hearing from some fabulous speakers. So a little bit about CDI, if you are not familiar, is the Community Development Institute. This will be our 36th year in operation at UCA. We're a 3-year community and economic development training program. We focus on really building leaders with a foundation for community and economic development and touching all pieces under that community and economic development umbrella, which is leadership development, tourism, workforce development, rural innovation, lots of fun simulations to get your hands on, like the poverty simulation, the Newtonia simulation, looking for winces or grins. If you've been through CDI, you know what I mean. So we really value that hands-on learning, but also that interaction with dynamic speakers, not only from Arkansas, but across the nation. So I do want to invite you, if you don't know about CDI, please reach out to our staff. And then we're also going to give some time during this program to highlight the other partners that were involved in putting on this event today. And with that, I want to transition over to Dr. Julie Robinson, who is the director of LEAD-R. And she's going to tell you a little bit about what that means.
All right. Thank you so much, Shelby and Dylan, and for putting all this on. It's a fantastic event. We are super excited to actually be at an in-person event and getting to meet a lot of folks that we've only interacted with over Zoom for the last 2 years. But as Shelby said, I'm Julie Robinson. I'm with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service, and I am director of the LEAD-R program. And over to my left, taking images or pictures, is Lisa Davis, who is also staff with the LEAD-R program, and really the one that keeps me on track daily. But if you are not familiar with the LEAD-R program, I don't have any sort of prize, but does anybody want to guess how long LEAD-R has been around? 84. Yep. Incidentally, it was also the year I was born. So I have to poke fun at some of my alumni, which are in the room today, but LEAD-R is, I believe it's Arkansas's longest serving leadership development program. And it's a 2-year intensive leadership development program that looks at any number of issues that are facing Arkansans all across the state in rural, urban, and suburban areas. So any Arkansan community member, community leader thinking about getting into leadership, into a leadership role, running for office, please consider joining LEAD-R. There again, it is 2 years, so it's pretty intensive. We travel all over the state and get to learn about those issues and what we can do to help resolve those, mostly by interacting with community members that are boots on the ground and are making those changes daily and are living those issues and how they're resolving those issues, and kind of learning some of their tips and tricks and learning from the experts. And we also are a little different in that we do a national studies tour. So we also focus on policy and how that policy at the national level, at the local, state, and national level impact our communities. And then we also, at the end of the 2-year program, culmination of the program is an international studies tour where we go somewhere across the globe, mostly focusing on areas of the world that impact Arkansas. There again, policy and issues. So there again, 2-year program. We are currently in LEAD-R class 19, and I've got some of those members that are in the audience today. Y'all stand up and wave. All right, and including Shelby. And so if you want to learn more about the program, I'm around all day, and I would be happy to answer any questions. But we've also got several alumni, and I'm going to ask them to stand. All right, and so if you really want the scoop on LEAD-R, go talk to those folks and they can tell you hopefully what an impact it's made and what they learned. But once again, thank you, Shelby. Thank you all for joining us, especially with such wonderful weather that we've had today. With that, I'll turn it back over to Shelby.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. And as we transition into the presentation portion of the agenda, I do want to go ahead and give a welcome to our virtual audience. As you see, we are streaming live from Zoom. So we do have some folks joining us on the live stream, even more than we expected because of the weather. But they won't see you anymore. Don't worry. Camera's on me. But they are going to be online with us for our first 3 sessions, and then we'll transition to just the in-person presentations. So I just want to say hi, everybody. Say hi. Hi. Okay, thank you. Give them a welcome too. So for our first presentation, I'm going to give this a little open. You will be receiving some items on your tables. Who would have expected when you came here today that you were going to be in competition with one another? Because you are. Tanya, you know what to expect, Tanya. No, please do not eat the marshmallows that are on your tables for sanitary reasons and for activity reasons. So you will be doing a special simulation right now at your tables. Dylan and Julie are passing out spaghetti, 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and 1 marshmallow, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and segue over to the folks from Van Buren. We have Julie Murray, who's with the Chamber of Commerce, Mayor Joe Hurst, and Dennis Williamson, who's with the Western Arkansas Planning Development District. I'm going to turn it over to Julie, Mayor Hurst, and Dennis. Please feel free to come up here and let us know what we're doing.
We have no idea.
So good morning. It's so good to see everybody in person again, isn't it? Catching up with a lot of people that we haven't seen in a while. And there are a lot of people here that I haven't seen in a while. That's good to catch up with. So the items that are on your table, as Shelby described, are going to be used to build the tallest structure you can manage as a team. You have 15 minutes to build the tallest structure you can. We're 10 minutes, sorry. 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes to build the tallest structure. Questions already?
Yeah, they can have questions. That's why we kind of have it.
Okay. And the marshmallow must be at the top of your structure. Now questions. Yes.
Where is the floor that structure will be at?
Your tabletop.
Must be a freestanding structure.
Yep.
Well,
Ready to
just
go?
One hint. You've got a diverse set of skill sets at your table. Yeah, that didn't help them, but that's what you get.
Real quick, does everybody have their spaghetti, marshmallow, string? Everybody get knocked out and have your material.
Is it only the materials you gave us that could be?
Yes.
Anything else?
Only those materials. And if you have any questions, we'll come around and look at you and we'll just smile.
Ready to go?
I'm gonna give you guys.
Are they ready to go? Okay.
Wait, do not use any of the materials yet. We haven't started. I'm just giving you time to plan. Make sure you have everything. Hold on, no touching the materials yet. This is gonna be chaos. Yes. I'll wait until. Do you wanna, Julie? We could probably do 15 minutes. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna give you a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Does anybody need more time?
No, we didn't. Get me in the marshmallow. You got the whole marshmallow covered. That's it.
If you're still touching, you're already disqualified. Okay, everybody, if you can please sit down. Okay, now we're gonna talk about, now I'm gonna turn it back over to Dennis, Julie, and Mayor Hurst to talk about why in the world we did this. Hopefully everybody had fun though. I'll let you go declare a winner as well.
We're gonna go bump each table and make sure it stands. That's the other part.
You got straight line winds coming in hard.
The first question that we have for y'all is, did you all hear the same thing? Did you understand the instructions clearly? And was it the same at every table?
No.
Probably not. And the communications phase is important in what we do in community development. That's one of the things. And it had to last until I was done. So one of the other important things that we noticed as we walked around, and you guys are creative. Holy cow. I mean, we got suitcases and planters, and I saw little ornaments. We did say the table, but most importantly, it was just the materials involved. That may not be what you heard, but in community development, one of the biggest things we have to deal with is rapid change, right? Things, we hear one thing and we're told one thing, and the next minute, you know, it's changed. One of the things that we had talked to or asked, when we looked around, I saw people wandering. So were some of you using R&D to try and improve what you had on your table? Now, we three have a different word for what R&D is. I'm a rob and duplicate kind of guy. And Julie has a different term for it.
Rip off and deploy.
And Joe he just follows the lead because he's got to be politically correct. So-
Did y'all cheat? Did you look at the other tables to see what was working?
Yeah, and I know Dana was, because I saw her leave her group. She didn't even help. She just completely left y'all to your own devices. Julie?
So how many of you made a plan to begin with? With it and made no changes to that plan. Right, exactly. Oh, you were right here.
We had one.
I had a plan. So we always have to be prepared to make those changes. And I know we're tired of the keyword, but pivot, right? Did every member at your table make a contribution?
Yeah.
Well, leadership counts as participating, giving direction.
Did not participating actually help the project? I didn't add anything to it, but
Did you feel like everybody's ideas were heard? So in community development, we've all learned that the more inclusive we can be and the more people we include in the process, the better ideas that we have, right? So no one felt excluded. It's a very inclusive group we have here.
Were there any fist fights? Because I missed them. I want to see some.
that was kind of my question, you know, did y'all have any disagreements among your group? And of course, dealing with economic development and community development, you know, we represent 3 different entities. We have a chamber CEO, a mayor, and
A regional.
Dennis works for Western Arkansas Planning. We all have to work together to achieve the success that we're trying to achieve in our communities. And sometimes we don't always agree, right?
Yeah.
We you know this, we live in a very divisive time in our country, in our cities and state. That doesn't change the formula for getting things accomplished. We have to work together. We have to be willing to disagree constructively and have those sorts of discussions. And these 2 have been really good at doing that. They've really helped me as mayor. So hopefully y'all include that when you do this project.
Yeah.
With CDI, one of the things that, and the 3 of us went through it together, so we're classmates even in CDI, not just in our workday.
The best class ever.
And many of you guys, I mean, and so many of you were part of our class, or you were in classes near us, and we spent time together. What I gained from this, and we talked about this the other day, each of us brought a different perspective away from CDI. And I'm sure with LEADAR and the different trainings that we have the ability to go through leadership, one of the biggest things, and Shelby mentioned it right from the get-go, was the networking. And, you know, it was also mentioned this morning about Zoom. You know, technology we've learned can fill some gaps in, you know, these little hiccups in the world like a pandemic, but they don't fill the voids truly. They don't allow us to create towers of spaghetti. And the networking that we get here, we get to add to our menu of services that we know by knowing people near us. Just like Emily's in Kentucky, but if I have a question that relates to the district and economic development, I could still call on her and vice versa. And we have, you know, we do emails back and forth, and we've done that with many of you. So it isn't just about mayor and the chamber director in the same community getting to know even more about each other. It's really about learning who you have not only across the state, but, you know, we get connected to other states through this. So that's what's been very important to me, especially from a regional aspect. I don't just take my job as a regional developer. It really is about the state of Arkansas and what we can do for the state of Arkansas and the state of the world.
And when Shelby first called and asked us to do this, I told her, I said, you know, I can sum it up in a nutshell, what it is that makes our community work so well together. because of CDI is because we all speak the same language. We all went through 1 week a year for 3 years, spending almost every second together and learning the same things at the same time. And so you have this shared language, almost shorthand, right? And you can move quicker, you can get things done quicker because of that. And as Dennis said, the 3 of us were all in the same class, along with our county judge and a few more folks from Fort Smith. And at the time, I was not in Van Buren. And that's how I met now Mayor Hurst, at the time City Planner Hurst. And that is one reason I am in the job I'm in now, is because of the connections I made at CDI. So
You're a great recruiter. I was
you are. You are a great recruiter. And so through that program, I got to know Mayor Hurst. And those of you that were in our class, maybe this is in every class, that very first week of year 1, that very first day, Steve Jones, my ADC, was speaking to our class. And some of you know me well, have heard me say this before, but he made the comment that if you can't base your decisions in your work on what is best for your community, you are in the wrong line of work. And boy, that hit home with me. And I've tried very hard to use that as a measuring stick for the decisions that I make in my career and for my community. And as I got to know the folks in my class, I realized, I saw that in them as well, and realized this is the group that I'd really like to work with. And when City Planner Joe became Mayor Hurst, I thought, what a great opportunity to work in Van Buren with some great people. So that is the connection. That is my story with the power of CDI. And it about to have a spaghetti.
I love the passion that y'all have. You intend to keep that thing up through the whole conference. I look for that. That should be an award winner if it stays up through the whole conference.
Marshmallow.
Well, I didn't say height. They didn't win for height.
Anything else, guys?
You summed it up. That
Unless
was
anyone
beautiful.
has any questions or comments about your experiences having gone through CDI and the impact it's had in helping you work with those in your community.
By the way, I had to sneak in. They didn't even give me a name badge. I wasn't supposed to be here today.
I do want to make a quick comment. So Julie, shared that we talked about this presentation beforehand. And has anybody ever done the Marshmallow Challenge before? So we had a couple of people. So it was based on a TED Talk that was done. You can actually look it up on YouTube. Very fascinating. They did this exercise all over the world, but they tested very specific groups of individuals to see who would perform the best. So as we begin to wrap up, I want you all to share or guess, who do you think did the worst group of individuals? Mayors? No. Maybe. Anybody guess? Worst? Politicians? That's a good guess. Anybody else? Engineers. It was Randy, and Randy, I think, said he's done it before. CEOs and business graduate students do the worst. And that's because they are educated to formulate a plan, stick to that plan, and not innovate, right? This is the best plan, this will work. And they just keep trying over and over and over, and they fail over and over. Or they come up with a plan and they say, well, we'll put that marshmallow on at the last minute, and then that extra weight would make it fall. So who do you think does the best? Right, kindergarten students do the best, because kindergarten students are taught to share. They're taught to listen to one another. And when something doesn't work, they try something new because they don't really care that they had a plan. So it's that process of innovation, and that really reflects what happens in our communities. Like Julie and Dennis and Mayor Hurst were saying, it's not a one-size-fit-all approach. It is, you can be creative in some situations. But sometimes we do have a strict set of parameters that we have to follow. And then that marshmallow, that big thing at the end pops up and might change our plan drastically. So I hope everybody enjoyed that workshop. Thank you to the folks in Van Buren for putting that in their presentation and sharing how that fits with the model for their community, because I do think they are model in the state. Anybody have any questions before we move on? No, y'all can decide.
You are even without, it's kind of close. One of the downsides is, unfortunately, the reason you didn't win, and I know nobody wants to hear that, that's not really a marshmallow. That's just a component of the marshmallow. She did say it had to be. She said
This is a perfect example of how our city council meetings go, right? Dennis, I'll break this tie. Guess what? Everybody won because we're here today and we're connecting with one another. We're going to transition to our next presentation, which is creating connected communities. This is a very exciting project process that has developed in Stuttgart, Arkansas. We were fortunate enough to be a very, very small piece of this puzzle that they're going to be sharing today. But I do want to welcome to the stage, again, you can read their bios on the table, Dave Roberts with Craft and Toll, Bethany Hildebrand with the Stuttgart Chamber of Commerce, and Jordan Williams with Windrock International. And I will transition to you all up here at the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the group who came before us, because I think you set us up perfectly. Really at the heart of this presentation is you're just going to see a lot of teamwork here. All of this is, as Shelby said, it was started long before where we're standing today. And all of the people here, and then even people not here, really represent the work that was done. Like Shelby said, our bios are available. I'm Jordan Williams. I'm with Windrock International, and I'm going to kind of set the scene and then let my colleagues Bethany and Dave really talk about the work that was done. Right now at Windrock, we have a project that's called the Rural Placemaking Innovation Challenge. It's funded by USDA. Really, the goal of this project is to capitalize on local community assets and potential by creating quality places that contribute to the community's social, physical, and economic well-being. We have a lot of puzzle pieces that we put into this. At the heart of this is really placemaking and creative placemaking from a community development perspective, which is really what we're going to focus on today. In Stuttgart, this is really dealing with the built environment in their downtown region of their community. As I said, this isn't a top-down approach. This isn't a one group doing this thing, but it really takes a lot of different spheres of influence to pull off large-scale projects like this. At Windrock, we work sort of in different spheres. We take this primarily from the local community context. All of the community partners that we work with, the projects that we help them accomplish are things that they are already planning to do with leadership that's already in place. We really come in and help bring in technical expertise like Dave at Craft and Toll, who's going to talk in just a second. And then we also try to partner communities with other leaders in their region who are working on similar projects to build interregional connection in that way. Here are some of our project partners, just to show you a little bit of the broader scope of this project. But today what we're really going to focus on is this map that you see here. Dave's going to explain it more. But how this project kind of came together and the regional approach that we were taking was looking at communities that are in the corridor of the US Bike Route 80, which runs from West Memphis into North Little Rock. We really took this project as an opportunity to prepare communities along that route for future cycling tourism on one hand, and on the other hand, creating environments in their communities that are more livable, bikeable, walkable places that people want to and can gather in their community. So now I'm going to let Dave talk a little bit more about what USBR 80 is, and then Bethany is going to actually talk about all of the great work that they've done in Stuttgart.
Thank you. So I'm fortunate enough to work across the state with CDI, doing walk audits, with Winrock, with UMS, and meeting a lot of great people. And so what I'm not going to talk about as much is about Stuttgart. I'm going to talk more about the road to get to Stuttgart. So if you look at the US bike route map of the United States, you can see some of those darker lines, and that shows you where some states have had their DOT actually apply and approve these routes. So US Bike Route 80 comes from North Carolina to Oklahoma City currently, and we were sort of the donut hole. Arkansas had nothing. And so UMS wrote a grant and we worked with RDOT to figure out the best route. And the reason that's important is it was in the study that we were able to work with RDOT to do the statewide bike and ped plan. And we identified at least getting us halfway in that, what route might be the best. We'll talk about the communities in a minute, but initially it was like, how do we get people from point A to B safely? And I know you might think riding your bike across the state seems like a crazy notion, right? I'm an avid cyclist and I'll ride long distance. I've never ridden across the state, but there are some people who do that across multiple states, and they got to stay in town, right? They need to spend the money, buy the food, drink the beer, and then hop on their bike and ride again. And so that's where this comes in. This was our committee, which was Metro Plan had a representative. It was RDOT, State Parks, Craft and Toll, and UMS funded this. We looked at what would be needed in each community and how could we establish diamonds, or the diamond state, right? So tiers of 1 diamond through 4, and get these communities to apply. And it'll be on a website. So if someone's coming across, they'll know if I need to push a little further, I can get to a 2 diamond town because I don't want to camp in a 1 diamond. Maybe I want to stay in a hotel. Maybe I need medical supplies or whatever it might be. So we worked through this and then looked at these routes. And these were our 2 potential routes, and they were basically the same distance from West Memphis to North Little Rock. So we broke our group into 2 teams. One team looked at the actual infrastructure, the bridges, the width of the roads, the size of the shoulders. There was a lot of detail analysis on how many trucks use these roads and who owns the road and what conditions the roads were in. But we got out and tried to verify that. I was on the team that did the amenities, where we went to those towns on each of those 2 routes. We went over to West Memphis, spent the night, back on the other route the next day, and we stopped in these towns. Not only did we photograph, but we checked out what the health facilities were, camping or hotel options, food, access to food, knowing that if a cyclist comes to these towns, they have to be able to accommodate them at whatever level. And then we looked at the connectivity to other trails, other facilities, both on the Memphis side and on the Little Rock side, and in between, all the ones that could tie to this. And the southern route was selected. And so that's where Stuttgart's going to come in. You can see it goes through Mariana, Clarendon, Stuttgart, England, and then sort of turns at England and goes to North Little Rock. And so the reason it was selected was not just because of road conditions and all that, but it was really the towns. You look at the different colors, most cyclists don't want to do the whole thing in one. They can't do that too much. It's just a lot in one day. And so we knew we had to have towns that could accommodate them. And this route had towns that were closer together than the northern route. And so here was the fun part. I got to get on my bike with some others, and we broke that entire thing into 3 different sections. So I rode about maybe 60 miles that day with my team of 3. And we just checked out the route itself and see what was the experience going to be like. How did it feel to have those trucks going by our elbow? You know, did it feel safe with the amount of shoulders and bridges? And what about these towns as we were coming through? And we had a lot of support helping us, as most cyclists would. And so really the last step was to get RDOT to apply for it. And they're in that process now. And so we had to make sure the partnerships with those municipalities was secure. They had to know that they had to sign some forms to say, yes, they want to be a part of this, so that RDOT could then submit this route. And that's where Stuttgart came in. And so it was really a team effort. And it was a lot of fun, not only because I got to ride my bike on a working day, but because I really got to know a lot of these towns better than I would have had we not done the project. And so what's great is I got to continue my relationship with these client groups in some of these towns. And Stuttgart was one that we sort of dove into with a walk audit, and you're going to see more about that in here in a minute, but you can see some of the partners from that project. Like I said, UMS was the key partner because they found the grant funding.
Thanks, Dave. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about all the things that kind of fell into place for Stuttgart. It was kind of ironic because USBR 80 happened or began happening as we had already kind of started working on some of these other projects. So as Dave mentioned, we received a grant to do a walk audit in our community through Shelby and her team here at UCA. So we partnered with them to have Dave come in with Craft and Toll and actually do a walk audit for our community. And initially when Winrock contacted me and said, you need to apply for this, this is a great thing for your community. Obviously, I didn't know what it even was. So we have put a lot of effort into keeping our downtown vibrant. We are at full capacity. It's full of businesses. It's a lot of our mom and pop businesses that are downtown. So we take a lot of pride in really focusing on our downtown and making it the best it can be. So we decided to do our walk audit in the 4 blocks of downtown, which is the main part where our business district is in downtown. So Craft and Toll came in. We had all of our community leaders, our mayor, our Parks and Rec director, city council people. We had just community leaders. So we had a group that came in and basically walked downtown. So Dave with Craft and Toll was great at pointing out just different points in our downtown that weren't accessible for either pedestrians, for cyclists, for handicapped individuals. So we had a number of things that we found that we really needed to work on. You can kind of see in some of these pictures, there's grates that probably had a 6-inch drop where if you came off the sidewalk in a wheelchair, you would not be able to get out of that drop. So we identified a number of things that were issues in our downtown. So this kind of just began the conversation of improvements and things that needed to happen in our downtown. So also with the walk audit, we identified a need for potentially having a pocket park in our downtown. So we had a couple of vacant lots that were not being used for anything. You can see on the top left over there were a couple lots that were identified. And then ultimately another lot, which is where we are going to put the pocket park. But we identified the need for potentially having a space downtown for people to have events, for people to just stop and read a book, whatever they may want to do. We have a couple great restaurants downtown. So we thought it would be great to give people the opportunity to be able to just enjoy our downtown. So we began the process of really looking at what that would look like to bring a pocket park to our downtown. So in the meantime of having these conversations, it was right at the start of the pandemic, and a pillar in our community, Alan Hamra, passed away from COVID. So there were a lot of people in our community that wanted us to come up with a way to do something in memory of him, because he was very passionate about Stuttgart. He was very into beautification of Stuttgart and all the things. So we decided that there would be no better way to remember him than to, in his honor, create a pocket park in our downtown. So coincidentally enough, where one of the locations was identified in our downtown, it was owned by a family that was extremely close to the Hamra family. So they immediately thought that was a great idea and were willing to donate that property to go towards the pocket park. So we, in May, had a pop-up where we were able to kind of set up what it might look like. And this gave us the opportunity to really get a lot of community feedback. We had over 300 people come through our pop-up that day. So we had comment cards, we had renderings that Dave with Craft and Toll had done for us, where people could really see what it could potentially look like and what we could do with this space. So we had so much positive feedback that came from that, and just excitement from people just knowing that we would be able to have a space downtown for people to really just enjoy our downtown area. It's about a block from the farmers market. So we just saw a lot of opportunities for this space in our downtown. So we did that pop-up in May and it went really well. We had identified a grant through the Arkansas State Parks Outdoor Recreation Program. So we knew that there were some boxes that we needed to check on that grant application. So the pop-up was our way of, during COVID, of doing our kind of our meeting with our community. So it allowed us to get the feedback that we needed to move forward and apply for that grant. So we did do that with our pop-up. So you'll also see we also spent a large majority of the day with taping off these sidewalks. We learned that we're not very good at doing straight lines with tape, but it was a team building exercise, to say the least. So we taped off these sidewalks right here near where the pocket park was going to be, because in our downtown, we desperately need to repaint the sidewalks. There's not any that are visible in our downtown area. You can see kind of where they used to be, but there's not any that are freshly painted. So for us, it was even interesting to be able to, as we were in the pocket park, be able to see the traffic flow change just by having that tape on the sidewalk, and people actually, instead of just running back and forth across the street wherever on those blocks, they were using the makeshift crosswalks to go back and forth across the street, and traffic with that was paying a lot more attention to the pedestrians. So overall, it just felt safer, even with just having tape, being able to make people feel safer as the crosswalks were down. So we then went to apply for a grant for our pocket park. So we found out in December that we were awarded $195,000. It is a matching grant, and we have to date raised over $200,000 to go towards this pocket park. So we will be able to build, thank you. So we will be able to build this pocket park in our downtown with a price tag of probably a little over $400,000, just as kind of in addition to our downtown. That's our farmers market pavilion. It's actually next door to the chamber and it's downtown, but we'll have something that will look very similar to that in our pocket park. So we'll have a staging area so we could have live music. We'll have lots of landscaping and things. So just a lot of really cool things that we're excited about happening from our pocket park. So along with the pocket park, we again had identified during our walk audit that we weren't very bicycle or pedestrian friendly in our city. So we then found out through UAMS SPAN that they had an opportunity to fund a master plan for Stuttgart for bicycle and pedestrians. So we began working with UAMS SPAN and again Craft and Toll to help develop this plan for us. So we had a number of community meetings. We tried to target people that we knew were cyclists in our community. I am not, obviously. So we definitely knew that we needed to really kind of know what their concerns were and where they felt safe and where they did not feel safe. So we had a number of meetings with different groups of people just to kind of talk about what areas need the most work. And we came to find out that we have a set of railroad tracks that goes through our downtown, and it's impossible for them to ride over those tracks because of how bumpy they are and how steep the incline is going over them. So we didn't realize that until we had these conversations. So we again, all of this goes back to the walk audit that we did. We established all of these issues that we needed to address, and then things just kind of fell into place for us to be able to work towards solving some of these issues that we identified that we needed help with. So we did this month officially adopt the Master Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan for Stuttgart. We also, at the end of last year, approved through the voters with a 96% approval rate to refinance our bonds to do a complete drainage and street resurfacing project. So all of our streets in our community will be getting resurfaced. And with that, we'll be able to take the master plan that we did and incorporate a lot of the things that were in that plan into our streets whenever we go back and re-overlay all of those streets. So we're excited to get to start that project. But again, all of these things came from partnerships that we have with UAMS SPAN, with Craft and Toll, with Winrock, with UCA. So I think that, you know, it's important that no matter where you're working in your community or what your role is in your community, as Julie said, there's so many connections that you're going to make that you will be able to use in all kinds of different areas of your community. So just a small example of how working with many different organizations can help do great things for your communities. And I think we'll take questions if y'all have any.
Bethany,
Hey.
first of all, thanks. Secondly, where are you? What's the status of the Ritter project to wire Stuttgart? How far along?
So as of last week, they have 100% brought fiber to all of the residential homes in Stuttgart. And they are starting on the business side currently. So one of Stuttgart's biggest struggles in recent years was a lack of internet accessibility. So we had some providers, but they pretty much told us that we weren't big enough for them to adequately service us. So we were running into, we would have small businesses that wanted to locate in Stuttgart. Well, when they called the provider, they would say, oh, well, we don't have enough room on the grid. We're not going to be able to provide service. Well, in today's world, you can't do anything, even personally, without internet, much less run a business. So we really kind of ran into a big issue with not having adequate internet. And thankfully, one of the good things, I guess, that came out of the pandemic was all the money that was put into all of the different rescue plans. And there was a lot of funding put into rural development for fiber internet. So Ritter Communications came in and got the grant for our community and are now catching us up with the times and making internet accessible to everyone and reliable internet accessible to everyone. So
I would like to know more about the tape that is used in the crosswalk. Did Craft and Toll advise you guys to use that, or is it like a special tape?
We got it from RDOT. It's like designed just for that. It's kind of a thermoplast, the heavy tape, but it's still rippled and peeled up, so it wasn't perfect. It was just good for that weekend.
Definitely, yeah, okay, definitely temporary.
Definitely temporary. Very tedious to put down as well. I wish we had pictures from
We
that.
had some sore muscles that we weren't.
Bethany, from the walk audit to the ribbon cutting, how long?
So we are currently waiting on Dave's team to get us the official drawings for the park. So I'm hoping that we have those here in the next couple months, and then we'll be able to start moving forward with demoing the lot and really getting going. We have some things in the fall that we would like to do in the park. So I'm hopeful that we get to have a ribbon cutting this fall.
But your money is committed.
Yes.
So
It
about
is.
2 years, which wasn't continuous 2 years. If you condensed it, it might be a year. But walk audit was during COVID in 2020. Here we are now. So.
Mhm.
Along the route, how many towns are along the route? How many of those is there an anticipation and expectation of how many you want to seek for diamond status, 3 diamond, 2 diamond, that kind of deal? And how does that compare? Do other states have a similar setup with that community kind of pathway?
So we did some research and found the rating system was kind of universal in most states that have a route going through them. We just changed it to diamond because it was significant here. And that chosen route has quite a few towns, but I would say Memphis, West Memphis and North Little Rock might be the only 4 diamonds. Everything in between would be smaller. And there were some really small towns too that are likely going to be passed through. But they, Clarendon has a hotel and a campground and a couple of restaurants. So, they certainly could even try to achieve a 2 diamond. And so I don't know if that answers your question,
Well,
but
it does. And I'm just curious, are they having those same kind of local conversations as to what else can we do to improve our status and make those adjustments and changes?
seeking grant funding and things of that nature?
They are with some nudging. Lisa Frazier from UAMS has relationships with most of those towns now. She kind of brought a lot of this together with us and has talked to Mariana and already knows Clarendon and now England is on board. So sometimes pulling them along to get them to understand the importance of it. That rating system isn't like official yet. It's not up on State Parks website. In fact, Joe Jacobs was helping us with that and he's since left State Parks. And so, you know, once that gets up there, it's going to be for everyone in the state. And so if, no matter if you're in Bentonville and you're obviously going to be a 4-diamond, or if you're over in, you know, near Jonesboro or wherever you are in the state, what RDOT wants to see is that main route have branches that connect to all over the state so that when someone comes through our state, they don't necessarily just cut through. Maybe they'll take some other detours to see other parts of the state and everyone will benefit from it.
Good, thanks.
Well, thank you guys so much. And I do want to make a couple of comments talking about walk audits. We are actually in the process of searching for 2 communities to do walk audits with before the end of our fiscal year, so that by June 30th. I just want to make a comment about the walk audits cities that we have worked with so far. They include DeQueen, Beebe, Lone Oak, Stuttgart, Monticello, Harrison, Clinton, Blytheville, Mountain Home, and Mulberry. If you want to put your city on that list as well, we offer those at no cost to the community. Outside of if you can provide us lunch, that is we're very grateful for that. But other than that, that program is no cost. You can reach out to Dylan or I if you're interested in that program, or talk to us about that later. It's a great way to spur development, especially in rural communities. So we're running a little bit ahead of schedule again, but we're going to keep pushing through and just go with the flow and have a little bit longer of a networking break, like I said before. So our next speaker is going to be our keynote presentation. Robert Burns with the Walton Family Foundation. We're so excited to have him, and a few of his staff are here as well in the room. But he's going to be sharing their work. And I really asked Robert to focus on, success stories from across the state that they've been a part of. Just to really highlight, I know Dennis earlier said R&D isn't research and development, it's rip off and duplicate. And so I find that I learn best when people tell me what's going great in their communities. And then I can adapt that in the work that we do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Burns. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Shelby. I'm going to do something a little bit dangerous to start, but I know y'all have been sitting for a while. So if you could just stand up and just shake it out a little bit. All right, I appreciate it. Maybe give you a little more energy going into the afternoon. Thank you very much. So if I know this is a bit of a dangerous time to speak, especially after lunch, but I really enjoyed the previous presentation and the work that's being done there. And to share a little bit of the Walton Family Foundation, I also want to recognize my colleague, Catherine Heller, who's in the back. Catherine, if you just wave. Catherine has come up today with me, so I'm glad that she's able to be with us today. I want to share a little bit of my background and one of the reasons that I was particularly excited to be invited to come here to speak, but also I really want to just say thank you to each of you and what you do in communities around the state. My background before coming to the foundation, I started my career in local government, worked in 4 different states, both in planning and in city management and community development. I then worked in the nonprofit sector, moved into philanthropy a few years ago, but I've worked in 4 different states. I've joined the foundation roughly about 6 months ago. And a large part of it is because of our focus in the home region, which I'll talk about in a minute. But look, I really just want to amplify my thanks for what you do on a daily basis. One of the things I loved about local government and community development, it's one of the places that I think actually on the day you get an issue, sometimes you can actually make a difference. You can't say that about every job, but I hope that you reflect on that. It's also one of the places that you're always living life in the fishbowl. Folks can find you all across your community, and sometimes that can be a positive and a negative or a challenge, but deeply appreciative of that. I'll also say, I don't know, is anyone from the city of Springdale here today by chance? Or close by? They were hit by a tornado this morning, so my thoughts are with the community and the people in Springdale. We're looking into, at the foundation level, how we can assist, but I know that it hit a school and some homes there in the area. So thoughts with the folks there in Springdale. In terms of the foundation, I'm going to go to the next slide. We focus on three key areas. One is K-12 education, which has really been one of the largest areas of focus for the foundation. The second is really on the environment, and that's protecting rivers and streams. And I'm happy to say that one of the areas that we very much support around rivers is the Mississippi River, which is vitally important to the state of Arkansas. And then the area that I and the team at the foundation focus on is home region, which is really primarily focused on Northwest Arkansas, but also includes the Delta region of Arkansas and Mississippi. Last year, and we've heard some about strategy here today, we launched something called Strat 25. And this is really a reflection of our mission, which is tackling tough social issues with urgency and more of a long-term approach, not looking at short-term solutions, but something long-term. And I'm proud to say, having come from both local government and the nonprofit sector, we are a foundation that supports multi-year grants, which is not something you find with a lot of funders sometimes. I think increasingly philanthropy is moving in that direction, which I think is great. And even though you can see we have three very different areas of work, there's some areas that we prioritize across all three of those. One is championing community-driven change. The second is prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, which gets to part of the topic I'm going to talk about today. And the third is collaboration, something that is really a hallmark of the conference here and the learning that's taking place. The home region really honors the Walton family's commitment to Northwest Arkansas and Delta communities, and we're looking to create opportunity and enhance quality of life for all. And when we consider this, we work in looking at the inclusive nature of the economy, the vibrancy of the community, as well as promoting equity through the work that we do on the ground. And while the needs, as all of you know, of Northwest Arkansas and the Delta are different, our work is really made meaningful because of the work that we do with partners on the ground. And the other thing we really work very hard to prioritize is lifting up the voice of the community. And how do we amplify that? Do we get input in a way that's very authentic? And we use that input with our partners in how we do our work. Today, I'm going to give an example out of Northwest Arkansas that both I've had the personal opportunity to participate in, but also it gives a real example of, I think, how community inclusion and input is done. And we set a bold vision to become, in Northwest Arkansas, one of the most vibrant and welcoming places across the country. And we're working on some distinct areas in order to do that. One is advancing this economic and cultural vibrancy of the region, supporting community leadership and capacity building, and that's particularly with nonprofit boards, leaders, municipal partners, and also fostering inclusive growth and a sense of belonging. And I'll speak a bit more of that in the example too. We envision Northwest Arkansas as one of the most vibrant and inclusive communities in the nation. And when we think of this, I know that we think about the different demographics of the communities that we work with. And while Northwest Arkansas roughly has a population of about 500,000 right now, if you look at the next 20 years, we're projected to double in size, which brings about a set of challenges, which all of you, I think, can be empathetic to and imagine what that may bring. I actually suspect that 20 years is probably too far out. I think my prediction is we probably will double faster than that. And as you know, we're one of the fastest growing regions in the country. A lot of it's driven by the professional opportunities that the region provides. So we have major anchors in the region, one being the University of Arkansas. We are home, which is highly unusual, to 3 of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the country. And because of that, it's really fostered an environment where businesses can thrive, vendors can move to, and the economy that grows from that. We also have a very active 200-mile transportation network and 2 transit providers. Now, that transportation network includes our miles and miles of paved trail, and you've heard a little bit about that today. But one of the things that just continually impresses me is the amount of trail structure we have across Northwest Arkansas, which you also are seeing spread across other parts of the state. You've heard some of that in the recent presentation. So much of our work is done with the goal of ensuring that affordability and the challenge around that is an issue that's addressed. As you can imagine, and for those that might live in Northwest Arkansas, you're seeing substantial increases in prices related to housing, both on the rental and the for sale side. That is definitely a priority of ours at the foundation. And where transportation becomes a major issue, as that becomes more cars on the road, how do you get to access to transit, and how does that work within your housing infrastructure? It also places significant demands on your infrastructure, as you can all imagine, across the region. And this is also thinking about how do we give access to residents to walkable communities that are mixed income, and where folks can get access to a space that is green or public or an inclusive park. And we think about that hopefully if someone's living in Northwest Arkansas, within 15 minutes, they could get access to green space of some sort. That's an ambitious goal, and that's something that we're looking at as part of our strategy. We have a unique role, I think, as a foundation to try to bridge divides and be a convener and bring people together and look at how do we solve challenges across the region and in the Delta. And we can do this by catalyzing investments in housing, as an example. We can help promote regional development solutions when it comes to housing or transportation or public entities or how the cities work together. And for all that are familiar with Northwest Arkansas, if you're not, you know that we have kind of 4 large cities in the region. I always say 5 because I think Siloam Springs is also one of the larger communities in my consideration. But if you look at the difference in the census from 2010 to 2020, you see incredible growth among some of the smaller communities in Northwest Arkansas. So part of the real opportunity there is how all the cities and communities can work together. I know that's easier said than done, but I think because of the regional work that we do, both at the foundation level or through the Northwest Arkansas Council or other forms of regional cooperation, I really believe we can set an example. The other advantage that I think we have across Northwest Arkansas is the fact that we can look at other parts of the United States and learn from things I think they wish they had done 20 years ago. We often get compared to a lot of other cities or areas of the country. And when I talk to friends who are in philanthropy or still in city government or nonprofit, they talk about things that they wish they hadn't been able to do 20 years ago. So what can we learn from that? How can we do site visits with public officials or nonprofit leaders to help do that or bring people here? What can we do to be a catalyst at the foundation level? So I'm going to speak about the Jones Center in Springdale and the work that we had the opportunity to do there. And I'm just curious, by a show of hands, has anybody been to the Jones Center in Springdale? That's great. So we've got a large contingent that have been there. It has an amazing history, and I'll give you a little background. It's a nonprofit community center that's really located in the heart of Northwest Arkansas. If you look at both counties together, located in the heart of Springdale, it's really a treasured local amenity, has a fantastic bike park, particularly for those that are looking for an introductory course into mountain biking. It's got a great course for that. And while it serves primarily Springdale residents, it draws visitors from across the region. It's set in the heart of downtown Springdale. It has roughly a 50-acre campus, which is pretty remarkable if you think about the growth of that area. And I think it has a real fantastic history through the Jones family and the Jones trucking entity that used to exist, where it's preserved some of the history there that existed when the headquarters was there, as well as uplifting the needs of the community. And if you have had the chance, as many have in the room, to see the facility, if you're in Springdale, I would encourage you to check it out, because in addition to having facilities for a lot of nonprofits that are in the greater Springdale area, it also features indoor pool facility. It has one of the, if not the only, ice hockey rinks in the entire region, indoor basketball courts, a gymnasium. It's really one of those areas that I consider a community gathering space. And yesterday, it wasn't because of this presentation, I was having breakfast with Terry Trotter, who's the brand new CEO at the Jones Center. And Terry has recently come back to the Northwest Arkansas region. She had worked previously at the Walton Arts Center in Fayetteville, but she's moved back and is building off a vision that Ed Clifford and his team had set over a long tenure there at the Jones Center. And I said to her that when I toured and I think about the Jones Center, I think of it as a community quarterback. It does a lot of things across Springdale and the region. And it's one of those places that folks think about to go to for access to a number of different services. And they're seeking to build that through the vision that I'm going to be talking about. We have been a part of the Jones Center funding, and because of the growth of the region, the Jones Center has been undertaking a campaign to modernize its 50+ acre campus. And we worked on a capital campaign along with the Jones Center, and we were part of what's called our Design Excellence Program, where the foundation works with some world-renowned architects and partners with a nonprofit to bring design services to help rethink what the facility could look like in the future. Jones Center also recognized that community engagement had to be part of that process. And the goal was to better understand the needs of the community and the neighborhoods that surrounded the campus. So to go to the actual case study, things that you likely will recognize, and in many cases, that this process coincided with the pandemic. So for all of us in this room, that faced a challenge in terms of how do you get input. And while many of the original thoughts were to bring people in person, is how do you engage folks virtually in this? And the anchor event for this community engagement process included a dinner drive where people received a free meal to help bring input out of the community and give the ideas for the future of the Jones Center. There were multiple surveys done, as well as community Zoom conversations and one-on-one outreach. Everything was produced in multiple languages, which was an essential ingredient, particularly given the demographics in Springdale. Springdale has seen a significant increase in the Latinx population and is one of the most diverse communities, not only in Northwest Arkansas, but the state. It's also home to the largest Marshallese island population outside of the Marshall Islands, which also has a unique language, as well as other diverse communities. A lot of refugee resettlement that occurs in Northwest Arkansas has also populated parts of the city of Springdale. So the importance of the language was really key. At the end of this campaign, they received over 1,800 survey responses, 400 meetings participants, and served more than 800 community meals. Now, all of this was designed to get community input in multiple forms. And while all these outcomes, I think, are very impressive, what we can learn is how do they set themselves up for success? And I want to just talk about a few of those examples. One of the things that they did at the very beginning is look for partners. So I just talked about the Marshallese population. They brought about the Arkansas Coalition for the Marshallese as part of the partnership outreach. They also reached out to Hispanic Women's Organization to help do additional outreach in the communities. Some of these partners are examples that they've worked with prior to this. Some are partners that they brought new as they undertook the process. And they also helped select the design firm and figured out what the community engagement process would look like. And if you take a chance to look at some of these slides, and I know they're small, but we'll make sure, I think part of this will be given to the audience in the end. You'll see things that, if you think of the Jones Center campus, which activity loop most appealed to you, they had answers ranging from play to agility. Jones Center in terms of what it means to the community or what it means to you. And when folks thought of Jones Center, what does that mean? The first thing that comes to mind for the community. And you can see all of these and the input that garnered throughout the community. One of the things that I had a privilege of doing is one of the second month on the job, they did one of these community engagement sessions. It was in the fall. The weather was good enough to have most of this outside. They also activated the inside of the center. They had booths set up all throughout the campus. So if you came as a resident or a community leader or a business owner, you were afforded the ability to go from spot to spot, provide input. The consultants that were working on the planning engagement were part of this. A key ingredient that I talked about earlier was food. There was food available through multiple vendors on site that was free of charge. And it was, they had Latinx vendors, they had Marshallese vendors and others in the local Springdale community that brought in food trucks and other mobile ability to provide food. And what I thought was pretty amazing about the whole event was just the wide variety of participation, because they had a very good turnout. And if you just looked across the spectrum, I stayed for the entire evening. It was a great, my mind, just looking across, diversity of age, diversity by race and gender, and looking at the community as a whole. Folks were bringing their kids to participate. And importantly, they didn't just do it during a very narrow window of time. They did this over an extended part of the evening. And I think as we think about how we engage community, and I want to just draw a comparative to when I was in local government, and I'll say this from a personal reflection standpoint, one of the things that I think a lot of folks are familiar with, if we're putting together a public project, we're often asking people for their input. We put up signs for a plan commission meeting, and you might get maybe one opportunity to come to plan commission, and you have a chance to offer input over email or other routes. But that might be the one public opportunity that you have. And I think it's really incumbent on all of us to think about ways that we can change that dynamic. How do we bring the Plan Commission to the community? How do we engage them in different ways? And when I look back and reflect and now see some of the different approaches, I think we're learning a lot about how we can do that, not just in person, but in the electronic medium. Zoom has afforded some different opportunities and ways to engage the community that I hope we continue to explore, experiment with. I also think it's really interesting now what technology is allowing you to do over your smartphone device, where you can actually do live polling and other avenues. So as you think about engaging your community, that's ways I would encourage you to do it. And you get to see this actively done at the Jones Center. And I just want to close by saying there's a couple of things. When I think about the Jones Center process, this was over a 7-month period. So it wasn't done just in a month or a few weeks. It was a very engaged period of time. They're taking all of this input now under new leadership to figure out what's going to happen there at the local level. How do they activate the campus? What do they do differently? I think it's got huge potential. And if you wanted to learn more about what the results have been, please feel free to go to the Jones Center website. It has great updates about the planning process and the plan itself. And I really believe that if you think about community engagement and thinking about the examples I used, this is really one of the key ways that you're going to get your best kind of input around community engagement and community development. And no matter what sector's leading the project, this is one of the things that I think we always have to consider. If you have a takeaway today, it's really that this community engagement matters, and that big change can take decades to realize. We all probably have had this experience. It's not immediate. And that for the change to endure, the hard work that got us there to innovate, to cultivate those relationships, to really get the people to the table, that takes a lot of time and effort, but I fully believe that it's worth the while to do that. And encourage you to think about the ways as you go back to your communities that you can do that. and seek out examples from across the state through the program and other ways that you might be able to engage there locally, but change about the approach. And I think we should all challenge ourselves that we're sitting in a public meeting or a neighborhood meeting or going out. Is if you look around the room, do people look different than you? And that's a good sign of how you're engaging or who's missing. I'm going to give you one quick example. I had the opportunity to work in a community at one time where we had a lot of folks that worked in plants where they were on shifts. So getting community engagement was often difficult. You may face that same thing in communities because we have a very active manufacturing sector here in the state of Arkansas. But how do you work with that on a shift basis? And one of the things that we did, we actually took some of those engagement sessions with the company's permission and took it to the break rooms so that when they were on break or at lunch or dinner, whatever that was, we were actually able to engage the employees in that process, particularly those that were in the community. I just think you have to think about how can you do things differently when it comes to community engagement. And nothing's perfect the first time you try it. I don't think anything's perfect just generally, but when you try these things and experiment, I think it can give you some really good results for the future. So I am happy to take questions both on the Jones Center presentation, engagement, or the foundation. So please feel free to ask. Yes, sir.
On the foundation side, could you address how you integrated the airport, the regional airports up there into your overall strategy?
Sure. In terms of the airports, and we think about transportation as part of our strategy, that's absolutely a key aspect. But I'm going to give kind of two examples of that. So when we think about the airports, and Springdale's airport is very close to the Jones Center, is how, when the planning process is going on, how do you actually equate for in the flights that are coming in and out of that airport, you have height limitations that you can actually put on site there. How can you actually activate that part of the site and still adhere to FAA regulations when it comes to that part of the site? So that's a key attribute. But also, how does the airport give an advantage to the Jones Center that might be able to be built upon for the future, but taking that as an asset that might be taken into place. But as you're there on site, you actually get a sense of when the flight patterns occur too. So that was absolutely critical. When we think about just airports as a whole, we think about it from the part of both transportation that are out of XNA and how that fits not just with the region, but for the counties that are located all throughout the region and in the tri-state area. And then in the case of the Bentonville airport, how do you activate that, not just for the airport itself, but across the community? And I think the Bentonville airport that's inside the city limits is actually a really good example of how a field has been activated almost as a cultural asset. It's become cool to spend time at the airport. There's a restaurant there. There's the ability to do some other things on site that I find different, but in a great way from a community standpoint. So I think that's a critical ingredient. But some of these smaller airports may be an overlooked asset in a lot of places that we think of just as one thing. But I think it's a great place for folks to go and be able to think of it as a community asset. Yes, sir.
Robert, first of all, thank you for all the incredible work the foundation does. You've been there long enough maybe to have a sense of the opportunity, when I use that word, Delta. If there's a job one for the Delta to stop the hemorrhaging population, what do you think? What needle do we think?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. And I'll say one of the things just from my prior work, I've had the privilege of doing work in the Delta in the past with a couple of other organizations and really have a heart for that part of the country. I think it's multiple, but I'm gonna honor your question too, which is how do you give access to opportunity, which I think is in the form of jobs that are going to keep people in place and allow the ability to build assets and have an income that's sustaining for the area, but allows for the investment back into the area. And I know a lot of things have been tried in the Delta region over the course of history. What we're really looking to do is how do we, and I go back to something I said earlier, how do we think about community-led and what that means? And we're really honoring that. And sometimes I have to admit, for our team or for ourselves, that can be tough at times because you think you have the solutions and the solution might seem right to you, but at the community level, we need to actively listen to that and try as much as we can to eliminate kind of our initial thought. But I think that's a key ingredient. I don't, it's not a one size fits all because I don't think solving, and I think all of you, I really respect, again, what all of you do in the communities around the state is community development is multifaceted. So I think that is one aspect of it, but a key aspect. The Delta has such a rich history that we also have to be incredibly mindful and empathetic to that history too.
I have a question, Rob.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important pieces of our work is trying to get, especially rural communities, to think of themselves as more than their community, a regional approach, right? And I think that one thing that Northwest Arkansas has done seamlessly and is really a leader in the state is you don't refer to Fayetteville as Fayetteville. You don't refer to Springdale, Springdale. You say Northwest Arkansas or Honest. So that's kind of the automatic reference we use. How do we mimic that in other parts of the state? What are some key ways that we can promote that regional approach and really form that higher impact in other areas? Yeah, and I know there's other parts of the state that are trying to do that. That's a caveat. So.
Yeah, no, Shelby, I think it's a great question. I will admit that a lot of history has gone into that. And I think there's key anchors that have driven some of that. One, I just talked about earlier in response to the gentleman's question is when the regional airport was started and thinking about that as a regional airport. I think that was obviously new for the area, but since has kind of taken place. I'm going to give credit to an organization that I think is really a key ingredient, which is the Northwest Arkansas Council and the role that they play in terms of bringing about other areas. But I fully believe, and this is just a fundamental belief from communities I've worked with, is that we are better as a whole than we are just as separate entities, because every community brings different strengths. And if you can figure out ways to just sit down together and figure out what those strengths are and be able to then lift them up to be able to be competitive in a different way, I think that's the collective strength. The other thing, I have seen this before and have been able to work in instances like this where a government entity, often it's the federal or the state level, requires you to come together as a region. Now, I think that's a lot more difficult because that's almost a forced marriage. And I don't think that often works very well. But you can learn from that example and try to build upon it. But I just feel like it's building upon those strengths. It's trying to identify how you work together. The thing I will observe, though, is that there is, even with the identification of Northwest Arkansas, I think this is a distinct difference that I would make, is that the communities still maintain a very distinct identity. I think that's really important. You don't lose your identity, but you can come together as a region and have a regional identity. And interestingly, as it grows, I think you'll see more of that growth over time, potentially even spill over in other ways as the region expands and continues to grow. So that'll be interesting to me to see how it evolves into other parts of the Northwest Arkansas region. Yeah.
And branding has a lot to do with that too, as far as funding for wayfinding signs and things like that. And I think the foundation has contributed to that before.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we have.
NWA cohesive and the image of the logos there.
Yeah, and it's a great point because I'm struck by and still continue to be struck by, there is a look and feel when it comes to wayfinding or signage, even on the municipal level, that is similar. So if you've come in, you kind of get a sense of where you're going, and you know that those are the signs you're going to be looking for. Other questions?
Okay. Robert, will you oblige me in an activity?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're gonna do an activity again. Some of you may have done this before. Robert, you're seeing this, okay?
Okay.
So you're gonna hold this box and you gotta stand at the front of the room. Can you do that?
Yep.
Okay. Some of you might have done this before with me, but if you have, don't give it away. Everybody's gonna engage in this. So you have those CDI cards at your tables, right? They have dual purpose. I want you to take that card, wad it up, okay, into a ball. Your goal is gonna be to get that card wadded up into this box. Okay? And I'm gonna give you a countdown, and you have to do it in the next 10 seconds, okay? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, done. Okay. Did you get hurt? Okay. Okay. So we just demonstrated a core piece of Robert's presentation. So Robert shared with us the importance of inclusion at the local level, okay? So let's think about this in our municipalities. This is a really cool exercise. You can do this in your community. Okay, so did anyone have advantage in that exercise? Okay, so raise your hand, share some advantages some people had.
Front row.
Front row, they were closest. Speed, somebody had the ability or skill to run fastest, okay?
Someone's done it before.
Someone has done it before. I've used this activity before, so absolutely, so they knew what to do. What normally happens in this scenario, I do this in a lot of our training events, is people kind of stare, they stay seated and they just try to throw it, right? That's their automatic, because I didn't give you any parameters, did I? I didn't say you had to stay in your seat. I didn't say you had to stand up. So you all kind of, I could tell the people that hadn't done it before, they were reacting. They saw the people that had done it before stand up and they were like, oh crap, like we're behind, we gotta go. So also that knowledge, that learned experience gave advantage. So we can think about this in our communities, that we have those people that are at the front table, right? Or we have those people with that knowledge, experience, connections. They're the ones that we see continually doing the work, right? Over and over. We see them at all the meetings that we go to. They have a voice. The folks at the back, you guys might not have even tried, right? You were just like, there's 10 seconds. I'm not even gonna bother standing up. I'm tired, I need a break. I don't wanna do it. That represents those that aren't given a voice in our communities, right? It's the same concept. And so as leaders, I just want you all to think about that simple activity. They fell down. Sorry, Shelby. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. But also I think that I have to reflect on myself in that activity too, because I was leading that activity. I didn't give you the correct parameters. I didn't give you enough time to get it in the box. I didn't give you the directions that you needed. And so as a leader, that was on me too, that I didn't give you the tools that you needed to be successful to engage in that activity. So there's many layers to that.
Can I give you?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Hey, I love this. I'm glad they weren't rocks.
And you can go back to
but just kind of playing off what you said, Shelby, instead of having you come here, I could have gone to each of you.
Absolutely.
That would have been a big difference.
You could have, absolutely. That is something I also say sometimes is, did I take the effort, my time and effort to make sure I did that for you? And I didn't. And a lot of times in our communities that happens with our leadership, we get stagnant. We don't make the effort. We get so many other things on our shoulders. We don't think critically about those steps to make you successful. So I just challenge you all to think about that, maybe even utilize this at your next board meeting.